Hi there. Tell us a little bit about who you are and who you represent here today.
Well, I guess I'm here particularly in my capacity as Dean of Law at Thompson Rivers University. So my name is Professor Bradford Morse. I'm also still a former Dean and continuing Professor at Tuparinga Faculty of Law at the University of Waikato in Hamilton, New Zealand, and a Professor Emeritus from the University of Ottawa, Faculty of Law. So a variety of different lives there, amongst many others. But I'm here particularly, I guess, as Dean of Law at Thompson Rivers University, a co-founder of IITIO, and we're the host of the next conference, as we were the one in 2016 up in beautiful Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada, Western Canada.
How do you see Indigenous trade playing a role for your organization for the next 10 years?
Well, as far as my organization being a law school, the way it comes in, we already teach international trade law. And so that tends to focus really on multinational companies and trade agreements between those recognized sovereign nations, the members of the United Nations Club, if you will, not the unrecognized sovereign nations that exist out there. But the very nature of trade is something, of course, that indigenous peoples had long before Europeans arrived at wherever it was they went around the world, whether that was Africa or Asia or South America or North America or Australasia. And the other part about this is that one of the ways, particularly in the North American context, in which Europeans and indigenous peoples found some mutual interest with each other was through trade. Right? That was the driver. But long before it became, we want all your land, it was, we want a little bit of land to settle on, and we want to engage in profitable trade that was mutually profitable. And through that, goods on the Atlantic coast found their way all the way into the central and into the western part of this continent, and going back the other way off to Europe. So what I see us really doing now is trying to restore that kind of historic foundation for the indigenous, non-indigenous relationship, as well as, of course, find that being beneficial to building economies. As far as law schools go, I mean, that's part of the law. And so we haven't paid enough attention to it, but it is the law of indigenous trade and law of international trade. And so I think we'll see that playing a greater role as it does, as we're in the process trying to develop some new courses on generating indigenous wealth as a focal point going forward. So I see this being an area of growth for us as a law school, but I think more importantly is an area of growth for indigenous economies.
My next question is, in relationship to the struggle for indigenous economic sovereignty, what does indigenous trade mean to you?
Well, it's both a way to build the economies. I mean, ultimately, any communities need a strong economic base, right? You either can be real rich, have inherited a bunch of stuff, or you've got to have an economic base. And so that's true for tribes in the United States as it is for indigenous communities in Canada. And one of the ways that you build that economic base is, of course, that you produce stuff that other people want to buy, which is called trade, and you provide services which other people want to purchase, which again involves the trade of services as well as goods. So is it important to indigenous economies? Sure. And if you don't have strong indigenous economies, then it's even when you have recognized sovereignty, international sovereignty. We look around the world, we see countries that have full sovereignty that are poor as hell, right? And so having sovereignty in and of itself doesn't make you well off. But likewise, being really rich doesn't give you sovereignty. And so the challenge here is to be twinning both together. And as indigenous economies strengthen, indigenous sovereignty becomes stronger as well.
Are there any comments you would like to add about your experience here at the Indigenous Trade Conference?
Well, this is the fourth one here, and I've been to them all since I've been part of it. And I think this one is perhaps we moved the chains a bit, to use a football example. So we're starting to now come to grips not just with the basic idea of, is it a good idea? Because everybody says it is, and well, let's kind of flesh it out a bit further. Now we're starting to talk in more of the pragmatic issues about how do we actually make it worth. What are the kind of the volume of scale that the trade needs to occur at in order to be financially viable for the parties? What are the legal structures we need to create? Are there legal structures that are particularly available or attractive to tribes and other indigenous communities that are not just take it off the shelf for standard business deals that exist in a non-indigenous world?